The moment the announcement for the new race blared through the station, Hacked felt his fur stand on end. The peaceful atmosphere of their shared meal evaporated instantly, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and urgent purpose. To move, people Jeb's command cut through the chaos as they rushed out of the lounge. Hacked's sensitive ears picked up the sound of hurried footsteps behind them, Cruz and Hoffman, no doubt trying to catch up. "Captain Sheets. We need to talk," Cruz's voice called out, but Jeb didn't even slow down. "Not now," Cruz Jeb shot back over his shoulder. "Ship integrity first. Everything else is secondary." Hacked understood the captain's priorities. After the expedited repairs, they couldn't risk entering a week-long race without ensuring every bolt and circuit was exactly as it should be. As they approached the Broken Promises docking bay, Hacked saw Hoffman attempting to intercept them. The old captain's face was etched with urgency, but Jeb deftly sidestepped him with a curt nod. "Whatever it is, it'll have to wait," Jeb said firmly. "We've got less than an hour to prep for a week-long haul." The moment they boarded the ship, the crew sprang into action with practiced efficiency. Killian disappeared into the weapons bay, while other crew members scattered to check various systems. Hack, Jeb called out, "I need you to review the race parameters. Every detail, no matter how small, and keep an eye on the repairs while you're at it." "Aye," Captain Hack replied, scurrying to his station. His paws flew over the console, pulling up the race briefing, while simultaneously accessing the repair logs. As Hack absorbed the information, his eyes widened. "Captain, this race, it's unlike anything we've done before. A straight shot to Kit's asteroid mining colony. 7 days of continuous racing." Jeb appeared at his shoulder, face grim. "Endurance run, eh? They're trying to wear us down. What else?" Hack's whiskers twitched as he scrolled through the data. Limited refueling stops, strict rules on ship-to-ship contact, and the course. It takes us through some treacherous areas, solar flare zones, debris fields, even a section of uncharted space. "They're not pulling any punches," Jeb muttered. "How are the repairs looking?" Hack switched screens, reviewing the logs. "Everything checks out on paper, but something feels off, Captain. The work was done too quickly, too perfectly." Jeb nodded, understanding Hack's suspicion. "All right, I want every system double-checked. If there's so much as a misaligned screw, I want to know about it." As the crew worked feverishly to inspect the ship, Hack divided his attention between studying the race route and monitoring the system checks. The complexity of the course was daunting. Maintaining top speed for a week straight would push both ship and crew to their limits. With just 15 minutes to go before the race start, Killian's voice crackled over the intercom. "Cap, we've got a problem in the engine room. Might want to take a look at this." Jeb cursed under his breath. "Hacked, with me," he ordered, already striding towards the engine room. They found Killian standing before an open panel, his face a mask of barely contained rage. Inside, amidst the tangle of wires and circuits, was a small device Hacked had never seen before. "Sabotage," Hack squeaked, his fur bristling. Killian nodded grimly. "Nasty little thing. Would have fried our navigation systems about 2 days into the race. Whoever placed it knew what they were doing." Jeb's eyes narrowed. "Can we remove it safely?" "Already done," Killian replied, holding up the device. "But there might be more. We need to sweep the entire ship, and fast." The final minutes before the race became a blur of activity. Every panel was opened, every system scrutinized. They found 2 more sabotage devices, one in the life support system and another in the fuel regulators. As the 1-minute warning blared through the ship, Jeb gathered the crew on the bridge. His face was etched with determination and barely contained anger. "They tried to cripple us before we even started," he said, his voice low and intense. "But we caught it. We survived. And now we're going to win this race, not just for ourselves, but for every racer out there who's been played by this corrupt system." Hacked felt a surge of pride and determination as he took his place at the navigation console. They had overcome the first challenge before the race even began. Whatever lay ahead in the long haul to Kit's, the crew of the Broken Promise was ready. The starting klaxon sounded, and Hack felt the familiar lurch as the ship launched forward. 7 days of non-stop racing lay ahead, but in that moment, with his crew around him and the stars beckoning, Hack had never felt more alive. The moment the starting klaxon blared, chaos erupted. The broken promise shot forward, joining a swarm of ships as they burst from the station's launch bay. Hack's paws flew over his console, feeding Jeb a constant stream of navigational data as they jockeyed for position. "We've got company on our starboard side," Killian growled, his hands hovering over the weapons controls. "Looks like they're trying to. Wait a second." Hack glanced at the tactical display and blinked in surprise. The ship Killian had noticed wasn't making any aggressive moves. In fact, it seemed to be deliberately keeping pace with them, maintaining a respectful distance. Captain Hack squeaked, his whiskers twitching with curiosity. "I'm noticing a pattern. Several ships are. Well, they're avoiding conflict with us." Jeb's brow furrowed as he studied the positions of the surrounding vessels. "You're right. Killian, open a secure channel to that ship on our starboard. Let's see what's going on." A moment later, a gruff voice crackled through the comm system. "Broken promise. This is Captain Yara of the Stardancer. We mean you no harm. In fact, we're here to help." Jeb's eyebrows shot up. "Help? In what way, Captain Yara?" "Your actions in the last few races. They've inspired a lot of us," Yara replied, a note of admiration in her voice. "A group of us have formed a coalition. We want to work together to stand against the corruption in these races." Hack felt a surge of excitement and apprehension. Allies could be invaluable in a week-long race, but trusting the wrong people could be catastrophic. Jeb seemed to share his caution. "That's a noble goal, Captain Yara. But forgive me if I'm a bit skeptical. Trust doesn't come easy out here." "Understood," Yara responded. "We're not asking for blind trust, just a truce for now. We'll prove ourselves through our actions." As if to demonstrate her point, 2 ships that had been aggressively approaching the Broken Promise suddenly found themselves intercepted by members of Yara's coalition. The potential attackers quickly backed off, clearly outnumbered. Jeb nodded appreciatively. "All right, Captain Yara, we'll give this truce a shot, but we'll be watching closely." As the race progressed into its first few hours, the benefits of the alliance became increasingly clear. The coalition ships formed a loose protective formation around the Broken Promise, warding off potential attacks and sharing tactical information. Hack found himself working in concert with navigators from other ships, pooling their knowledge to plot the most efficient course through the challenging race route. It was a novel experience, having allies after so long of facing every race alone. As the first day of racing neared its end, Hack couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. They were making good time, their ship was performing well, and for once they weren't constantly looking over their shoulders for the next attack. During a quiet moment, as Jeb took a short rest and Killian manned the helm, Hack approached his captain with a datapad in hand. "Captain," he began, his voice low, "I've been analyzing our position and the behavior of the other ships. We're in a good place, but there's something else." Jeb raised an eyebrow, encouraging Hack to continue. "This coalition, it's bigger than we thought. I've identified at least a dozen ships that seem to be working together, and the way they're positioned." Hack paused, almost disbelieving his own conclusion. "Sir, I think they're protecting us specifically. We're not just part of this alliance, we're at the center of it." Jeb's face grew serious as he absorbed this information. "They're rallying around us," he mused. "We've become a symbol." Hack nodded, his whiskers twitching nervously. "It's an advantage, but it's also a risk. If the race officials notice this pattern, they'll come at us harder than ever." Jeb finished. He placed a hand on Hack's shoulder, a gesture of appreciation and reassurance. "Good work, Hack. Keep monitoring the situation. We need to be prepared for anything." As Hack returned to his station, he cast a glance at the starfield visible through the bridge viewport. Somewhere out there, amid the glittering points of light, were ships filled with people who had chosen to stand with them. It was a heartening thought, but also a sobering one. They weren't just racing for their own freedom anymore. They had become the focal point of a growing movement, a beacon of hope for other racers who dreamed of a fair system. The pressure was immense, but so was the potential for real change. As the Broken Promise continued its long journey towards kits, Hacked steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The race was far from over, and he had a feeling that the true tests were yet to come. But for the first time in a long while, they weren't facing those tests alone. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter as they pressed on, a cohort of Allied ships flanking them in the vast expanse of space. As the race entered its second day, Hacked found himself jolted from a fitful sleep by the blaring of proximity alarms. He scrambled to his station, whiskers twitching with tension as he took in the tactical display. Multiple hostile contacts approaching fast. Hacked called out, his paws flying over the console. Looks like a coordinated attack. Jeb, who seemed to have barely slept, was already at the helm. Killian, battle stations. Hacked, alert our allies. Let's see if this coalition is worth its salt. No sooner had the words left Jeb's mouth than the first volley of energy blasts lit up the void around them. The Broken Promise shuddered under the assault, but Jeb's expert piloting kept them one step ahead of the worst of it. Killian's hands danced across the weapons controls, returning fire with precision. Whoever these bastards are, they came prepared, he growled. Military-grade shields on at least 3 of them. As Hacked relayed their situation to the Allied ships, he watched in awe as the tactical display came alive with activity. Ships from Captain Yara's coalition moved to intercept, forming a protective screen around the Broken Promise. Incoming transmission from the Stardancer, Hacked announced. Captain Yara's voice crackled through the comm system, tense but determined. We've got your back, Broken Promise. These vultures picked the wrong day to start trouble. What followed was a battle unlike anything Hacked had ever experienced. The void around them erupted into a dazzling, deadly light show as ships wove intricate patterns through space, energy weapons blazing. Jeb's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as he guided the Broken Promise through the chaos. More than once, Hacked found himself holding his breath as they narrowly avoided collisions or deadly weapon blasts. Hacked, I need options, Jeb called out, his voice strained as he wrenched the ship into a tight barrel roll to avoid a barrage of missiles. Hacked's mind raced as he analyzed the battlefield. Suddenly, he spotted a pattern in the enemy formation. Captain, there's a weak point in their attack pattern. If we can lead them into that debris field at coordinates 227 Mark 35, we might be able to break their formation. Jeb nodded grimly. Good eye, Hacked. Relay the plan to our allies. Let's turn this ambush around on them. As Hacked transmitted the strategy to the coalition ships, he felt a surge of pride. They weren't just surviving now, they were leading, strategizing, turning the tide of battle. The plan worked beautifully. The Broken Promise, flanked by their allies, dove into the debris field. Their attackers, too focused on their prey, followed without hesitation. But where Jeb and the Allied captains wove through the field with precision, their pursuers found themselves scattered and disoriented. Killian let out a whoop of triumph as his weapons found their mark, disabling the engines of one of the military-grade ships. That's how we do it on the Broken Promise. But the victory was bittersweet. As the dust settled and the remaining attackers retreated, Hack's sensors picked up distress signals from several Allied ships. Captain Hack reported, his voice heavy, we've lost 3 Allied vessels. 5 more have taken heavy damage. They won't be able to continue the race. A somber silence fell over the bridge. They had won the battle, but the cost had been high. Jeb's voice was solemn as he opened a channel to the remaining Allied ships. To all ships who stood with us today, you have our deepest gratitude. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. We will carry your spirit with us to the finish line and beyond. As the damaged ships peeled away, limping back towards the nearest safe port, Hacked felt the weight of their sacrifice settle on his shoulders. These weren't just anonymous racers anymore. They were allies, friends who had put themselves in harm's way for a cause greater than themselves. The race was far from over, and Hacked knew that this attack was likely just the beginning. But as he looked around at his crewmates, at the determination in their eyes, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just a single ship fighting against impossible odds. They had become the center of a movement, a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream of a fairer system. As the Broken Promise and its remaining allies regrouped and set course for the next leg of their journey to Kitz, HFY made a silent vow. They would win this race, not just for themselves, but for every racer who had ever been wronged by the corrupt system, for every ally who had risked everything to stand with them. As the Broken Promise entered the last day of the race to Kitz, the strain of the week-long endurance run was evident on every face. HFY's paws felt heavy on his console, his usually twitchy whiskers drooping with exhaustion. He blinked hard, trying to focus on the stream of navigational data before him. "Status report," Jeb called out, his voice raspy from days of issuing constant commands. HFY swallowed, forcing himself to concentrate. "We're maintaining our lead, Captain. Kitz is approximately 18 hours away at our current speed. The nearest competitor is 3 hours behind us." Jeb nodded, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Good work, everyone. We're almost there. Just need to hold it together a little longer." As if the universe itself had heard Jeb's words and decided to test them, alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. HFY's console lit up with urgent warnings. Multiple contacts appearing on long-range sensors. HFY squeaked, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. They're coming out of nowhere, Captain." Killian, who had been dozing at his station, snapped to attention. "Impossible. There's nothing out here that could hide a fleet that size." Jeb's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. "Unless they were waiting for us." HFY, any word from our allies? HFY's paws flew over his console, reaching out to their coalition partners. The responses came in quickly, a mix of confusion and determination. "They're seeing it too, Captain. Captain Yara is rallying the fleet, but we're all exhausted. I don't know if we can withstand another major assault." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the reality of their situation sank in. They were so close to victory, but this final hurdle seemed almost insurmountable. Jeb's voice cut through the worried murmurs. "Listen up, crew. We've come too far to falter now. This isn't just about winning a race anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that no matter what they throw at us, we won't break. HFY, plot us the fastest course through that fleet. Killian, I want every weapon we've got ready to fire. The rest of you, to your battle stations. We're going to punch through this blockade and show them what the Broken Promise is really made of." As the crew scrambled to their positions, HFY felt a surge of determination cutting through his exhaustion. His paws danced across his console with renewed energy, calculating trajectories and escape vectors. Captain HFY called out, an idea forming in his mind. "If we can coordinate with our allies, create a spearhead formation, we might be able to break through their lines with minimal engagement." Jeb nodded approvingly. "Do it. Get Captain Yara on the line. We'll lead the charge." What followed was a testament to the bond that had formed between the Broken Promise and its allied ships. Despite their exhaustion, despite the overwhelming odds, they moved as one. The Broken Promise took point, with allied vessels forming a protective wedge behind it. As they approached the hostile fleet, HFY held his breath. The enemy ships loomed large in their view screen, weapons charged and ready. But just as it seemed they were about to be engulfed in a firestorm, Jeb's voice rang out clear and confident. "Now, Killian." The Broken Promise's weapons blazed to life, joined by a barrage from their allies. The coordinated assault caught the enemy fleet off guard, creating a momentary gap in their formation. Their HFY cried out, spotting their opportunity. 30 degrees to port, full thrust. Jeb didn't hesitate, sending the ship into a gut-wrenching turn that had HFY clinging to his station. They shot through the gap in the enemy lines, their allies close behind. The next few hours were a blur of tactical maneuvers and tense moments as they outran their pursuers. But with each passing minute, Kitz grew larger in their view screen. As they entered the final approach to the asteroid mining colony, HFY allowed himself a moment of hope. They had done it. Against all odds, through exhaustion and ambushes and the longest race of their lives, they had persevered. The finish line appeared before them, A shimmering barrier of energy stretched across space. With a final burst of speed that seemed to draw on the last reserves of both ship and crew, the Broken Promise crossed the line. Cheers erupted on the bridge, a release of tension and joy that had been building for a week. Hacked found himself swept up in an embrace by his crewmates, their differences forgotten in the euphoria of victory. But as the celebration died down, Hacked caught Jeb's eye. The captain's expression was one of pride, yes, but also of grim determination. They had won this race, but both knew that the real battle, the fight against the corruption that plagued the racing world, was far from over. As Allied ships began to cross the finish line behind them, Hacked realized that this victory was bigger than just the Broken Promise. They had led a coalition, inspired a movement, and in doing so, they had taken the first real step towards changing the system. The docking bay of Kit's asteroid mining colony bustled with activity as race officials, media drones, and curious onlookers swarmed around the newly arrived ships. Hacked stood at the foot of the Broken Promise's ramp, his fur still ruffled from the week-long ordeal, watching as Allied ships continued to arrive. Quite a sight. Isn't it? Jeb's voice came from behind him. The captain looked as exhausted as Hacked felt, but there was a fire in his eyes that spoke of triumph and determination. Hacked nodded, his whiskers twitching with a mix of pride and disbelief. "We really did it, Captain. And not just us. All of them." He gestured to the growing fleet of Allied ships. As if on cue, Captain Yara of the Stardancer approached, flanked by several other Allied captains. The group looked battered but jubilant. "Broken Promise," Yara called out, a grin spreading across her face. "You led us one hell of a dance out there. I don't think the racing world will ever be the same." Jeb stepped forward to greet them, shaking hands and exchanging words of congratulation. Hacked watched, marveling at how their small crew had become the center of something so much larger. The celebration was interrupted by the arrival of a familiar face. Cruz, looking harried but determined, pushed his way through the crowd. Captain Sheets. Cruz said urgently, "We need to talk. Now." Jeb nodded, gesturing for Hacked and Killian to join them as they moved to a quieter corner of the docking bay. Cruz's voice was low and intense. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest with this victory. The coalition you formed, the way you outmaneuvered that ambush. The officials are in an uproar. They're talking about changing rules, increasing penalties, anything to break up this alliance." Hacked felt his fur stand on end. They had known there would be consequences, but the reality of it was still daunting. Jeb's face was grim but resolute. "Let them try. We've shown what we can do when we stand together. They can't put this genie back in the bottle." Cruz nodded. "You're right, but be careful. Your influence is growing, and that makes you an even bigger target. They'll be watching your every move from now on." As Cruz hurried away, Hoffman approached, his weathered face beaming with pride. "Captain Sheets, that was some of the finest racing I've ever seen. You've given hope to a lot of people out there." Jeb clasped the old captain's hand. "We couldn't have done it without allies like you, Hoffman. But I have a feeling the real fight is just beginning." Hoffman's expression turned serious. "You're right about that. Listen, a group of U.S. captains have been talking. We want to formalize this coalition, make it something official, something that can stand up to the corruption in the system, and we want you to lead it." Hack's eyes widened at the proposal. He looked to Jeb, seeing the weight of the decision in his captain's eyes. After a moment of contemplation, Jeb spoke. "It's a big step, Hoffman, one that'll put an even bigger target on all our backs. But if we're going to change things, really change them, we need to stand together. Count us in." As Hoffman left to spread the word, Hacked found himself overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had started. They had entered this race as a single crew fighting for their freedom. They were emerging as the leaders of a movement that could reshape the entire racing world. Captain Hacked said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, "What happens now?" Jeb looked out over the docking bay, at the Allied ships and the crowds of racers gathering around them. "Now, Hacked, we build on this victory. We race smarter, we race together, and we show the galaxy that there's a better way. It won't be easy, and the road ahead is going to be even more dangerous than what we've faced so far. But I can't think of a crew I'd rather have by my side for it." As the reality of their new role sank in, HFY felt a surge of determination. They had won more than just a race. They had kindled a spark of hope in a corrupt system, and now it was their responsibility to fan that spark into a flame. The journey to Kits had been long and perilous, but HFY realized it was just the beginning. As he stood there with his crewmates, watching allied captains and racers gather around them, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The broken promise had lived up to its name once again, breaking the promises of a corrupt system and forging new ones built on integrity and unity, and in doing so, they had set in motion a change that could ripple across the galaxy. As the celebrations continued around them, HFY allowed himself a small smile. The race to freedom was far from over, but for the first time the finish line seemed within reach. Not just for them, but for every racer who dared to dream of a fairer future. The long haul to Kits was over, but their true journey was just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.